Hello YouTube. Today's video is gonna be the second part to AS3 API best practices. So I recorded part one maybe about 5-6 months ago, really just to talk about memory utilization, increasing of memory, the use of shared objects, etc. Now what I'm gonna go and talk a little bit about is potentially scaling of a much larger declaration. So obviously within AS3, a declaration is JSON based, and some of these declarations can get quite large. The larger the declaration is, you have to use asynchronous mode, and of course the longer the time is going to take for it to post. So the question about best practices is definitely scale declarations across tenants. And so I've done some math, and I've kind of looked at some of the declarations from like iHealth, and it shows me that we definitely see most, at least in small, medium, and large environments, we definitely see scaling out across AS3 tenants or partitions. And most configurations are of like 1 to 10. So potentially it could be a application per tenant, or it could be multiple applications across multiple tenants. But we definitely see something from like 1 to 10, and then like 10 to 50, and then maybe like 50 to 100, and anything post that is kind of somewhat unicornish. And so, based on this data, we could actually build a pretty good configuration that kind of streamlines a large, kind of like small, medium, and large deployments. So it's like very similar to like t-shirt sizing. And based on this t-shirt sizing now, I can actually build quite a cool baseline. And from a baseline, I can actually get performance numbers, right? Which is actually kind of cool. What I'm going to show here in part two is baselining of a medium to large configuration. So let's take a look at kind of like what a medium to large configuration would kind of look like. So as you can see right here, I have a large configuration of large tenant. And in this example here, we have like a bunch of HTTP apps. So you can see this is a very simple HTTP application right here. Simple HTTP with the virtual and some pool members. So here, because it's of large, my pool members are of like probably like 10 to 20 nodes each, or nodes per pool member. And as you can see, I mean, it is quite substantial here. In fact, this actual configuration actually goes till around 11,000 lines. So it's not small, and it actually includes both. It includes both HTTP. It includes, so as you can see right here. Here is the HTTP. Let me actually scroll down in here. Unfortunately, it's all concatenated open. So let me bring out some. So there's 11 HTTP. Let me bring out. It's almost like it goes up to like 50 apps, I believe. So let me. Okay, here we go. So you can kind of see there's TLS. So we can kind of see where we get to the end of this. This is actually kind of cool. So here we go. So that's the end of that one. So it kind of talks. Okay. So here we've got 45 HTTP apps in this one large. And this is a combo. I've done a lot of analytical data and looked at a lot of configuration. I came up with this large config. So 45 HTTP apps. And now I'm starting to get into the HTTPS apps. And you can see this one's going to be a bit bigger, obviously, because I'm embedding certificates into this AS3 declaration. So here's number 2. And as you can see, I think I have like 50 of these HTTP. There's 10, there's 24, keep on going down, and you can kind of see, okay, there's 39, so 55, so there's a combination there, 59. Okay, so there's quite a lot of, you can see there's TCP, so we'll go down to the bottom of this one. This might be the last, yeah, there it is. So in this app right here, it goes up to 60. So this is like a configuration of like 150 applications. And so we saw 45 HTTP, we've seen 60 TLS, and the remaining are of TCP. So here there are probably about 40 to 50, TCP apps. So you can see the remaining are TCP. So this is a combination of everything. Combination of HTTP, combination of HTTPS, combination of TCP, embedded certificate, monitors. Everything is kind of in this configuration. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to deploy this configuration to BIG-IP, and we're going to watch kind of like what it's going to do. The thing here is that we're going to then go and manipulate this configuration, and manipulation of configuration is interesting, and that's kind of what I want to talk about in this second phase. So let's go ahead and take a look and start here. So let's see what I'm going to go ahead and get the version of BIG-IP that I'm using. So I'm using the current version of AS3. It's version 47. Now 47 is unique because 47 introduces the per app API. So per app API, think of it as updating a single application that has been deployed by AS3. That could be in any AS3 tenant. But what's unique about per app is that I only need to send the app. So think of it as a patch, but it's not using JSON patch. It's posting the update. AS3 will do the diff. And so let's go ahead and take a look at what's on this system. There should be absolutely nothing. It should be completely blank. And as you can see, system is blank. So we'll go ahead and check the settings. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get the settings API. So the settings API is going to show me what settings I have. So you can see here in my settings API that my per app is currently set to false. And I'm working on changing this to a GA option, but 47 was the beta. And so we're doing some optimization, and we will move this to more of a general availability 1 or 2 releases from now. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and declare this entire 11,000 lines to this large tenant. So I'm going to go ahead and declare this large tenant. I'll take a look at my BIG-IP to determine. I can also then track this based on a asymmetric. Right now, I'm just using a symmetric, but after 45 seconds, it's going to move to an asymmetric API. I know that. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go and look at my BIG-IP UI. What I can also do is I can pull the task to determine when it's finished. It's quite a long big configuration. It's 11,000 lines. So this would kind of like be what I would call my pipeline. I would potentially run this maybe every night, or maybe every couple of days. I can run this pipeline. This is actually the source of truth. So as you can see right here, after 45 seconds, the declaration went into asynchronous mode, and then of course there's the task ID. So I can go ahead and pull this task ID pretty much as much as I want. It will come back it'll either say it's in progress, or it will say it is completed. So now that my AS3 declaration is deployed, I can go ahead and do a GET request on the declared tenant. And as you can see, what will come back is a 200 OK. And as you can see, my large tenant. So as you can see, my full entire configuration is there, right? So honestly, it took I didn't time the whole entire thing because it was asynchronous mode. So definitely took more than 45 seconds, right, to post that initial post. After that, the timer stopped because the API responds back with, the task ID. So you can keep on checking that. But it took a couple minutes for that 11,000 lines. Now, you definitely hitting quite a large size there of 11K. I mean, so my advice at this point from a best practice is to start to scale it out. You kind of get into a point where this configuration is actually getting pretty big. Sure, I've seen bigger. It can get bigger. There's no object count size. What will happen is you will start to affect eye control rest. right? And so this is some of the big things that we're working on with BIG-IP v20. That's BIG-IP next. That's going to be released as actually tomorrow, like October 5th, 6th. BIG-IP next is coming out. So this is just solely focused on Classic. So this gets to a point where horizontally, this configuration is now to a point where it does take time to post this, right? And if iControl REST is busy doing other stuff, you potentially could have some issues. So it's like definitely start scaling this out now, right? So maybe create another tenant. But another option is that what happens if I need to make a change? I want to make a change to this configuration. Let's say, for example, I posted this configuration and I want to now go into application 1. And in application 1, let's say, for example, I wanted to manipulate these pool members. That's ultimately what I want to do. Is I want to change. Let's say, for example, I've got 20 pool members and I only want 5, or I want to remove some of these, or I want to modify some of these. So let's go ahead and initiate that. Let's go ahead and make those changes where I am changing a app. Now at this point, you've got 2 options. I can modify the initial source, which is I can make the change in this AS3 declaration. Or what I can do is I can change the API to a per app API. So what I'm going to do right here is when I change the API, I'm actually going to go ahead and make a change to this API. So by making a change to this API, I'm going to post this option of per app deployment allowed is true. So I'm going to post this to the settings endpoint right here. Now, to be honest with you, this is still a beta feature. It does require, some additional testing, but I'm feeling pretty confident. I'm going to show you right here that this is, definitely something that kind of like you should be able to do, right? So start using this feature. You provide me some feedback, because it's actually taken us, it took some time to actually get this coded in, and this is fully supported, right? Yeah, sure, it's a beta option right now, but supported meaning that, don't put in production, but definitely play with it until it becomes a GA feature, right? We'll kind of push the settings down out of the beta into a settings down below. There'll be a per app API, kind of like right here. It'll become out of the beta settings and down. It'll come down here. So now that I've changed the API settings, let's go ahead and just do a quick get on the API settings endpoint. So I'm just going to do a get on the API settings endpoint. So now think about this as like during your workday, you actually potentially just want to manipulate the API. You can make changes to the source of truth through GitHub. You can commit a GitHub change. You can do that diff in GitHub. You can commit, and then you can run the pipeline. But maybe that is outside of work hours, or potentially during a maintenance window when your pipelines run. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to actually go ahead and send this change. And in this change right here, what I'm going to do is change this virtual here. And as you can see, it's application 1. And you'll notice that I've manipulated the pool members. So I've kind of changed just to 5 pool members. But hypothetically here, from a best practice perspective, I'm updating the configuration only with 29 lines. So instead of sending like 11,000 lines of JSON text to the AS3 API, I'm only sending 29. Now, yes, we're doing some optimization, right? Actually, physically now in AS3 48, I'm doing some optimization. There'll be some more optimization, potentially maybe in 49, and also potentially some other stuff coming that can kind of optimize this a little bit. But the usability perspective here of just being able to go and touch the API just with, for example, with 29 lines, I think is huge. So AS3 is still doing its thing. AS3 is doing a diff in the back end. But you could see that by making the change, it was under the asynchronous time. And so I made the change there of just by making a change of the simple app. So by posting the entire 11K, it took more than 45 seconds. By making it change just to the app itself, it took less than 45 seconds. So bingo. I mean, this is best practice now. Like, sure, you're still declaring state, and you still need to manage your configuration, because your configuration now on AS3 represents what you posted in the update to the per app. And that's different than the declare, right? But there's no reason to say that you can't go now and update your AS3 declaration in your pipeline. And that's what you have to do. Simply just pull the configuration, do a diff, and make those updates. And so for example, now if I actually go and get the entire declaration, which I can do, I can actually go and get the declaration. And so this is going to get the entire declaration. You can see it's of 11,000 lines. But what's interesting here, that I'm not going to go into the whole thing because it's quite a lot, but what's interesting here is, as you can see, there is the change. Now, sorry about that. Now, obviously, this change right here, this change is modified, right? This change is modified because I made changes to this modification. This doesn't match my initial configuration post. My initial configuration post, if I go and look here, the application 1 is slightly different. Application 1 includes all of this. But I can add that back. I can absolutely add that back. If I wanted to add that back, I could actually take this, let's see, this right here. I could take this entire block of addresses. I can copy that. I can go back into my per app post. I can break this down, this block of addresses right here. Let's paste over here like that. There's these addresses. Let's make this pretty here. So now 68 lines. Let's beautify this. And so there's the original applications back. Maybe you just need to take those applications offline for a few minutes. What we're doing is we're posting to tenant of large and of application. So this is actually the tenant name, right? Now this could be hidden. You could just create a resource here, but ultimately BIG-IP is still managed by a folder, right? This is a resource group. It's a folder. It's kind of like where your applications are going to show up on BIG-IP. So what I'm doing now is I'm actually going to post that back, and let's see if that change is under the asynchronous time of 45 seconds. Because basically it's going back to its original state again, which I made that change back again, right? So I made a simple modification. I made that modification back just by adding the original pool members based on the original source of truth, or you can declare that state back again you could declare the BIG-IP configuration back again if you really wanted to, and of course that could I could have done either way. To have declared it back, or just kind of copied it back again. Kind of like two different ways of doing things. So as you can see right there, it took about 42 minutes to push that configuration back to AS3 again. If I post that configuration again, there's no change, right? So now you could run your pipeline again, and there would be no change because I've manipulated the config. And so what this allows me to do now is it allows me to modify any of these applications within this tenant just by posting the initial application. And look at that, I'm only dealing with one app of kind of 63. In this case it's 68 lines. Instead of trying to manipulate the full configuration here of, there you go, 11,000. So that's why I wanted to bring this functionality in, because declares the entire state, the entire configuration. But when you start getting to the application's endpoint, you start to just make those updates. This is manipulation of the configuration at a much smaller at a much smaller, if you want to call it scale, much easier from a usability perspective. It is absolutely much easier. So this feature is new. Please use this feature and provide me some feedback. We released this feature a couple of weeks ago with the AS3 47 release, and I'm still waiting. I've received some feedback from some customers, but I'd love to get some more feedback. Again, 48, we're doing some hardening, and then we're also going to potentially maybe change the mutex lock. So that means that you're going to be able to communicate with two different app endpoints at the same time, right? So you can make two API calls to two different endpoints. But the challenge is you're still dealing with the underlying iControlRest framework on BIG-IP Classic. Now on BIG-IP Next, that's all different, and so that's kind of how it is today. So with regards to the second piece of AS3 best practices, this talks about how you can use the per app API feature to enhance your usability of AS3, to manipulate the configuration with using smaller chunks, smaller pieces to make those modifications during the day, and then potentially either take it back, or use or later on use a pipeline to actually push those configurations back if you want, or update the pipeline with the configuration changes that you made. If you like this video, please give it a like, thumbs up. Please make sure you're subscribed. I am looking to get to 1,000 subscribers. I'm around 600. I want to try and increase the subscribership of this. If you want other videos, or if you need any additional features, functions, just reach out to me. You can reach out by opening a GitHub issue, or reach out to me directly through YouTube. Have a lovely day. Thank you.